Hello, friends. Today, I want to talk about everybody's favorite topic, taxes. More specifically, I want to discuss why, given the crises that we currently confront, we should be raising them on the super rich and corporations. In a Guardian newspaper column a few months back, British writer George Monbiot observed, "The one thing that can stop the rise of the far right is the one thing mainstream parties are currently not prepared to deliver: greater equality. The rich should be taxed more and the revenues used to improve the lives of the poor." I couldn't agree more. Back in the day, even the rich seemed to understand that times of crisis meant having to contribute more. More than a century ago, in a famous 1910 essay called The Moral Equivalent of War, the American philosopher William James wrote, "War taxes are the only ones men never hesitate to pay, as the budgets of all nations tell us." Yep. But here's the odd thing. Many of our leaders rightly say that Trump hasn't merely imposed tariffs on us. The US president has declared economic war on Canada. We are experiencing an assault on our economy, employment, and sovereignty, all aimed at softening us up to accept annexation. And in the face of this, much like the early days of the COVID pandemic, we're being invited to make common cause. We're all in this together, our leaders implore us. Elbows up. But if we are indeed standing on the breach of an economic war, how best then do you sustain social solidarity, this widespread feeling of shared sacrifice and purpose? And relatedly, why are our leaders failing to institute what is normally understood to be a foundational price of war, namely tax increases on corporations and upper income people? Wartime, after all, is generally financed by special war taxes, with a particular duty borne by those most fortunate. That's why the First World War saw the introduction of Canada's income tax. Yet in contrast, we seem to be entering the current fight with our leaders doing just the opposite, competing over who can provide the biggest tax cuts, with the largest gains going to the most comfortable. Like, I gotta ask, is this a serious fight or a phony war, as historians dubbed the early months of World War II? See, successful mobilizations require that people make common cause across class and race and gender, and that the public have confidence that sacrifices are being made by the rich as well as middle and modest income people, meaning they require social solidarity. And inequality is toxic to maintaining social solidarity, not to mention confronting the far right. In times of crisis, cutting taxes is a backwards impulse. What's actually required is an increase in revenues to pay for the programs that will be urgently needed. As the saying goes, in an emergency, everyone has to do their bit. This is a key lesson from the history of mobilizations, both successful and unsuccessful efforts. During the First World War, for example, inequality and really grotesque levels of profiteering in Canada undermined social solidarity and undercut recruitment efforts. It's one of the reasons for the war's conscription crisis that nearly tore the country apart. After all, how can you expect thousands of people to voluntarily offer to make the ultimate sacrifice while others are making quite literally a killing? So consequently, at the outset of the Second World War, the Mackenzie King government took bold steps to lessen inequality and to limit windfall profits. Not only did the Second World War see the introduction of Canada's first major income transfer programs, unemployment insurance came in the war, the family allowance came in the war, but it also saw new progressive taxes established, including an extraordinary excess profits tax that capped profits at their pre-war average. These measures were pivotal to sustaining social solidarity during World War II. J.L. Isley, Canada's Second World War finance minister, said at the time, "No great fortunes can be accumulated out of wartime profits." Amazing, eh? Now you fast forward to more recent years, and we can all remember the whiplash of the first year of the COVID pandemic, when as a country we went from low social solidarity prior to the outbreak to a post-war high point of social solidarity when we all used to gather in the evenings and bang pots and pans, to then pissing away all of that goodwill, all in the space of about 10 months. Remember that? Now, how was that solidarity squandered? I think because despite the, we're all in this together mantra of our political leaders, it turns out we weren't. Some were making huge sacrifices, working on the front lines of the pandemic or losing their jobs, while others were making out like bandits. Just like in the First World War, the pandemic saw rampant corporate profiteering that played a key role in driving up the cost of living. That's why, in the face of today's crises, it's time to raise taxes on wealth and the well-to-do. The austerity messaging that we've been hearing from our governments is garbage. As the 2015 LEAP manifesto declared, public scarcity in times of unprecedented private wealth is a manufactured crisis designed to extinguish our dreams before they have a chance to be born. The Canadian corporate sector is currently sitting on over $700 billion in cash. It was Mark Carney, when he was still governor of the Bank of Canada in 2012, who described such extraordinary sums of idle cash as dead money, he called it. That money should be legislated back to work, conscripted into service via taxation. One of Carney's first acts as Prime Minister, though, and supported by the Conservatives, was to reverse the Trudeau government's controversial but actually well-advised plan to tighten up the capital gains tax exclusion from 50% to 1/3, a move that would have improved equality. But in justifying this gift to some of the wealthiest among us, Carney said that our builders should not be penalized. But by what strange logic should a construction worker, an actual builder, pay income tax on all their income, while someone who makes money from money pay an income tax on only half that income? That decision to cancel that planned increase in the capital gains taxes is going to cost the public treasury about $19 billion over the next 5 years, while harming inequality. It's nuts. If this is a moment of crisis, then it's surely a time to institute new taxes on wealth and windfall profits. Alex Hemingway, senior economist with the BC Society for Policy Solutions, has published an excellent proposal for a federal tax on net wealth of the super rich. He proposes a tax of just 1% on net wealth above $10 million, 2% on net wealth above $50 million, and 3% on net worth above $100 million. A narrow wealth tax of that kind would capture only the very richest 0.5% of Canadians, or about 87,000 families. But get this, it could generate $32 billion a year. Hemingway also proposes new progressive taxes on property that would capture a modest share of the windfall benefits that have accrued to property owners in this overheated housing market. In the last election, the federal NDP proposed a tax on windfall corporate profits that could raise about $1.6 billion a year, while a 15% minimum tax on profits could raise about $4 billion a year. And if we really wanted to take on Donald Trump and his corporate backers, how about this? A 15% export tax on Canada's oil and gas exports to the US could raise $25 billion a year. The point here is that in a wealthy country like ours, the options are many to pay for wartime scale transformation. While many are indeed struggling to make ends meet, overall as a country, scarcity should not be our guiding ethos. And the lessons from history, as we face today's threat and the need to mobilize, really they're twofold. First, we need to appreciate how inequality serves as a barrier to cross-society mobilization. And second, we need to understand that effective mobilization requires policies that fulfill a promise that we will better look after one another, that we will guarantee good jobs and income supports for all, that people will be treated with dignity and fairness, and that everyone will be appropriately anting in to this effort. Because when you're asking people to share in a great undertaking, that's how you keep everyone on the bus.